Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 8-game Major League Baseball slate on DraftKings and FanDuel today. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, the weather concerns today, the Pittsburgh game, the New York Mets game, the Cleveland game, and Boston game all have weather concerns. You will have to check back closer to slates to make sure those games are good to go, but most of them should be fine. I just am a little concerned about some of the rain around those parks. So let's go ahead and get into the slate though. We will cover FanDuel at the end. We're going to start with our pitchers here. We got Spencer Strider as a great option today for Atlanta. In some of his last 8 games, he's been over 26 fantasy points. He's not been under 9 strikeouts in that stretch either. He's got a great matchup here as well, which is definitely a bonus, so sign me up. Though the big issue here is he's $12,800. He's absolutely expensive, but obviously with his averaging 26 fantasy points a game throughout the year, he's definitely in play here. Then we'll look at Garrett Cole for the Yankees. Now he's facing the White Sox, who've been kind of hilariously bad up and down throughout the year. But in his last 5 starts, he's been over 20 fantasy points, and his K rate is decent. His floor is a little lower than Strider's, but he does have the benefit of being $1,500 cheaper than Strider. He's a decent option on the slate in a plus matchup. I really like his upside today. Though he doesn't have quite the upside Strider does, he's definitely a good option. Then we'll look at Webb for the Giants. Now he's facing the Angels today. I don't really have a super great feeling about him, but I do like his upside here. He has had a lot of decent games this season, and a 17 to 25 fantasy point game is probably very likely here. And he's also a decent price considering the 2 super expensive pitchers. But he's still pretty expensive for the cost. If he only gets 17 fantasy points. For Peralta from Milwaukee, he faces a very good matchup here against Colorado. And 7 of the 10 games recently, he's been over 20 fantasy points. He's facing another opponent that he should be able to get over 20 fantasy points against. I should add that I think his bad games tend to be really bad, and his earned runs tend to be an issue, but he has a good situation today. Obviously, he's not the best pitcher on the slate, but he is a decent option on, especially here on DraftKings, where the top 2 guys are super expensive. Then we're going to look at Bello for Boston. Now, he is an interesting spot against Kansas City. That gives him a decent floor. At 15 to 20 fantasy point range is what feels most likely, though, which is a little bit pricey if he falls under 20 fantasy points. He's been capable, though, in this type of matchup, and he's a very good contrarian option today. Though he is a little bit expensive. I feel like everybody's a little bit over expensive at the pitching aspect due to Strider being so high. But he's in play today. Dylan Case for the White Sox is also in play. His upside is enough to be interesting, though he is facing the Yankees, which is not an easy task all the time. That said, they've been super inconsistent, and he has a pretty low ceiling, but he does have the upside today. Though he has been, he does have games where he's really bad, so that is a concern. And then for a Hail Mary play, we're going to look at Dunning. For Texas, he is facing Oakland today, and there's not much on Oakland to like today. He doesn't have a bad earned run average. He just has been inconsistent throughout the year. He does tend to give up some earned runs sometimes, but if he can limit them today and have a good strikeout game, then he can pay off here, which he has done a couple times, but he just hasn't done it a ton. He's got a high ceiling, but he's got a super low floor, and he definitely meets the low floor a lot more than he hits his ceiling. That's why he's a Hail Mary play today. So let's go ahead and move into our catchers here. So we're going to start with Sean Murphy for Atlanta. Now, he hasn't hit the ball well lately. He seems like he's in a slump. Of course, the Atlanta offense is helping keep him up, so it's not too big of an issue for their offense. But if he can get back going again, that would definitely be helpful for us. He did hit a home run in his not last game, but the game before. So I do like his upside today, though he is a little risky. He didn't play the last game, so he should be back, but hopefully get back to hitting well. But he was in a bit of a slump for a little bit. Then we're going to look at Salvador Perez. Now, I don't know if he's going to play today because he's been hurt, but if he does draw the start, then he'll be an interesting option. Though he hasn't hit the ball particularly great, he has managed to get hits in most games. He does have some home run potential today, though he's a little pricey based on the fact that he could be hurt still a little bit. Mitch Garver for Texas is in play here. He's hit the ball very well recently. He's a guy I really like a lot today, especially with his home run potential. He's been scoring fantasy points in pretty good in most games, and his price is still pretty fair. If his price gets any higher, it's going to be a little bit harder to roster him, but he's definitely in play on this slate. Freddie Fermin has also hit the ball very well and has nice home run potential. He's actually had 4 home runs the last 10 games, but he's managed to score fantasy points in a lot of different ways, even without the home runs, so I do like his upside here. He's also just hitting a ridiculous 421 over the last 10 games, so he's a great option on the slate. And then Danny Jansen, if he does draw the start today, which I don't know if he will be interesting if he can play with some low-end home run upside. I do like Furman and Garver better in the price range, but he is in play as well. Then we'll look at first base and Ohtani. He is a top-tier option today. He's hit the ball very well, has home run potential just about every time he comes out. He's got 40 home runs already, and he's been 3 games since his last one, so the Angels need him to hit home runs if they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs, so this is definitely a situation where he bodes well. Matt Olson also in play. He's also hit the ball extremely well. He's had 7 home runs the last 10 games. He's very close to catching Ohtani in home runs. He's only 1 behind, and he's hitting as good as anybody on the slate. He's a little bit cheaper than Ohtani, which does help a little bit, though he is very expensive as well. Then we'll look at Justin Turner. Oopsie, sorry. I do have Justin Turner as a core play. I don't know why I can't find him. Anyhow, he's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. He's got nice home run upside here. He has a great matchup here against Kansas City, and their pitching, who should be suspect today. So I do like him quite a bit. I also like Wilmer Flores, who's also a core play for me for San Francisco. He's hit the ball very well with the 341 average. He's got some decent home run upside as well. He has been a little bit streaky, but he has been getting a lot of multi-hit games. That does give him a lot of potential for a high upside game. Brandon Belt is also in play for Toronto. He's hit the ball pretty well as well. Not quite as good as Flores, Turner, or Olsen, but I do think he has some good upside here, and he's been hitting home runs and having a lot of 2-hit games, so if he can do that again today, he'll definitely pay off. And then Jake Bauers, he seems like a kind of a guy that's going to fly into the radar today, but he's hit pretty well for the Yankees recently. He's had some home runs. I do like his upside, though he is a little bit risky due to his price, due to his batting average not being as good as some of the other guys, but he does have the home run upside, and he's hitting very well. So if you like a Yankees stack, he's definitely somebody I would go with. Maybe in the second base, we'll look at Marcus Semien. He's very expensive. He's also hitting the ball extremely well. He's had 351 batting average over the last 10 games, including 4 home runs. He also hit a home run in his last game. And he's facing another good matchup here against Oakland, who tends to have really tough in pitching. He's had a lot of games in a row with some hits, so I do think he draws really good upside here, though he is very expensive as well. Estrada for San Francisco is kind of a sneaky play today. He hasn't hit the ball very well lately, but he does draw some upside today in this matchup against the Angels pitching. I don't know that he's a great option, but he's a pretty good option on this slate. He's a little bit overpriced here, but he's a better option on FanDuel. Then we'll look at Justin Turner, who could also play at second base. He's also available here. Ozzy Albies is in play also for Atlanta. He's been really good lately. He's finally got out of his slump, and it looks like he's hitting the ball very well. He's managing multi-hit games a lot, and that's giving him some nice upside. When he plays well, that really helps Atlanta's offense. And then we'll look at Davis Schneider for Toronto. Now, the metrics don't look all that great for him today, but he's only played 3 games so far, and he has absolutely crushed the ball in all 3 with 9 hits in those games, including 2 home runs. He's only struck out twice. He's had 2 home runs. He's just doing a lot. So I really like his upside here. As long as he plays like this and he's dirt cheap, then he's definitely a viable option, especially on a slate with super expensive pitching. So you can definitely pay down to help pay up, fill your roster. I expect him to be somewhat popular today as well. Jose Ramirez for Cleveland's in play at third base. Now, he's been inconsistent throughout the year. Has been a little bit of a slump, but he's starting to hit some home runs. He's also getting some stolen bases, which is actually helping his fantasy points as well. He's just got a couple on the season, but he's only got about 15 on the season, but he did get 2 last game. I do like his upside in this matchup, and it's favorable, but he is fairly expensive. Austin Riley also very expensive. Now he's not hitting as well as some of his teammates, but he's still hitting almost 300 on the last 10 games, and with 4 home runs, and he's definitely capable of hitting home runs. Picking which Atlanta guys to potentially use is typically tough, but it's even tougher today with the pitching being so expensive. Then we'll look at Mikhail Garcia for Kansas City. Now, he has been hitting the ball very well. He's not a huge home run threat, but he's just a guy that you can get some hits and RBIs and stolen bases from occasionally, and I do like his potential in this matchup, so he's definitely viable here. And he's nice and cheap. JD Davis also in play for San Francisco. He's a little bit more expensive than I like, and his batting average has been inconsistent, but he does have some home run upside today, so I think he draws some interesting option at this position. Maybe in the shortstop, we'll look at Bobby Witt Jr., who's very expensive for what he's been doing, but he's got 4 home runs the last 10 games and hitting almost 400. He's priced a little bit lower than some of the other super expensive guys, so that does help. He does tend to be a little bit more streaky, though, than some of the other guys, so I do think he's viable today, and he can definitely put up a gigantic games, but it's not a must-play like guys like Olsen or Otani or Ronald Acuna is. Then we'll look at Lindor for the Mets. Now, I really do like Lindor. He's hitting the ball very well recently, hitting 351 over the last 10 games. Also getting some home runs, which definitely gives him some added upside. He hasn't been good against the Cubs, though, in the 3 games that he played earlier this year. But he does draw some good metrics here, and I do like his upside. Then we'll look at Duran for Texas. Now, he can play shortstop or outfield. Now, I will preface that he's basically a home run threat today. He's been very robust recently. He's not hit the ball very well. But he does draw good matchups against Oakland, and in 7 games against Oakland, he hit the ball extremely well. And so I do like his upside. Oakland is a very bad pitching team. So Texas definitely has some good stackability today, and he's definitely a fun option to add because of his price being nice and cheap. Then we'll look at our outfielders, and we're going to start with Acuna, who is a core play for Atlanta. He has just been absolutely insane. With a 500 batting average over the last 10 games, he's getting stolen bases and home runs. He's not hitting them like Otani and Olsen are, but he is hitting them pretty frequently, and he does draw great metrics here. He's had 4 straight games over 16 fantasy points as well. I expect him to have another good game here, especially against weaker pitching in Pittsburgh. So Otani also can play at outfield. Judge is also in play for the Yankees, though he's been a little bit shaky since he's been back from injury, striking out some, not getting home runs that much. I think he's only had 1 so far, but he definitely draws the potential, so we'll have to wait and see if he can get going again, but I do like his potential in this game if he is at full strength. Yelich for Milwaukee is Milwaukee's an undervalued team today. Now, I do think they have some viability in this matchup, but they are a little bit risky. Yelich is the best option on the team with some nice home run upside on the slate, but he hasn't hit the ball particularly well lately, so that is a concern, and he's very pricey, but he's definitely in play today. Austin Slater is a nice cheap option. Now, he doesn't have a lot of home run upside. He's got some hitting upside, though he's been very streaky, and he doesn't always end up playing every game, which is a concern. They also have A.J. Pollock now, so we'll have to wait and see if he does draw the start today. If he draws the start, he'll be an interesting, cheap play, but he is very risky on this particular slate. Then we'll look at Michael Harris for Atlanta. Now, he draws some good metrics here. He's hitting the ball pretty well. He hasn't been scoring as many fantasy points as we'd like, typically, but he does draw home run potential in this game, and he also draws good metrics as a viable, just good hitter with stolen base potential as well. So I do think he's a top-tier option on the slate. Rob Snyder for Boston is interesting on the slate. He's not a huge home run threat, but he is a guy that hits the ball pretty well. He's also hit for 300 over the last 10 games. The concern here is his price is not bad, but he just doesn't tend to score a ton of fantasy points. But occasionally he fits the bill for that. Now, he hasn't been starting most games, but when he does draw the start, he has some utility. So don't take the fantasy point per game too strongly because he has not started a lot of games, and then he'll come in and pinch hit or pinch run. Adam Duvall for Boston also in play, though he is a little pricey. He has not hit the ball very well recently, but he does draw home run potential in this game. Yoshida for Boston is in play today. He's hit the ball inconsistent throughout the year, but he has a good batting average over the season. He's just been a little bit of a slump, but this is his first year, so he has good metrics here. He draws good home run potential, and he's definitely has some upside. Though he's a little bit cheaper on FanDuel than here. Ruiz for Oakland is kind of a sneaky play today, as he has nice stolen base potential. That gives him a lot of potential for fantasy points. Even in a not super ideal matchup, he definitely draws good metrics for this game and an opportunity to score some decent fantasy points at a pretty cheap price. Jake Bauers can also play here in the outfield. And then Barchot is kind of a Hail Mary play for Toronto, as he's not hit the ball well this season, but he has improved recently. He does have some home run upside as well. So for sub $3,000 plays, Rob Refsnyder for Boston, $2,700. Jake Bauers for the Yankees can play first base or outfield for $2,600. Robbie Grossman for Texas, outfield, $2,600. Definitely a good option if you stack Texas. David Schneider for Toronto, $2,700, can play second base. And MJ Melendez and Freddie Fermin, both for Kansas City at $2,900 and $3,000 respectively. Both are slightly in play if you want to go with the Kansas City stack, which is actually somewhat viable today. And then Luis Urias for Boston, he's high risk, high reward, but he's second base and third base for $3,000. So let's go ahead and look at FanDuel real quick, and then we will get you taken care of here. For FanDuel, we have Strider, Cole, and Peralta all actually within $1,000. So I definitely like Strider the best, but if you want to go contrarian with Cole or Peralta, that does make a lot of sense on the slate as well. So I wouldn't go too cheap on the pitching today, but because there's plenty of value that you can mix and match to get the pitch guys in, and the cheaper options are just high risk, and there's just too many good top tier pitchers. Looking at catcher and first base, and Matt Olson and Pete Alonso, both very expensive but have a lot of viability today. Justin Turner is nice and cheap, as well as Salvador Perez and Wilmer Flores. They all draw good metrics for this game, for these games, and draw pretty good prices. Jake Bauers does too, but he and all these guys almost can play multiple positions outside of Perez. Maybe a second base, Marcus Semien and Ozzie Albies draw the obvious best options, as they've been hitting the ball very well. But though they are fairly expensive, and getting to either Thairo Estrada, Wilmer Flores, or Davis Snyder here at second base is definitely advantageous. I really like Snyder today at this cheap price, but Thairo Estrada is also a lot cheaper here on FanDuel than DraftKings, which gives him a lot of upside here. Justin Turner can also play here at third base. Bo Jose Ramirez is in play, as is Austin Riley, though they aren't quite as safe as some of the other guys in their price ranges, but they're definitely in play. But Wilmer Flores and Rafael Devers can also play at this position, and they are underpriced for this matchup. Then we'll look at shortstop. Bobby Witt Jr. and Thairo Estrada can play here, as well as Francisco Lindor. All three of those guys draw really good metrics for these games, and Estrada is a little bit underpriced, which is helpful. Willie Adames is actually nice and cheap here, though he's been very streaky. Mikael Garcia is in play here, as well as Ezekiel Duran, as they are a little underpriced as well. Maybe the outfielders, Ohtani and Acuna and Judge, are obviously super high-priced plays, but they are viable if you can figure out how to roster any of them. Yelich is also in play, though he's a little bit expensive here on FanDuel. Austin Slater's pretty cheap, but he does need to play, as well as Rob Snyder to really pay off here. Rob Refsnyder, excuse me. And then Michael Harris is a little bit underpriced on FanDuel, which definitely gives him some upside. Yoshida, Adam Duvall are both options from Boston who have some nice upside, and then Jake Bauers can also play here in the outfield. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.